coordinator, program coordinator at Swedish Issaquah. It's a fancy title for basically a gopher, for pretty much anything that has to do with clinical and nursing, any projects, things like that. About 3.5 years ago, we were approached by Lexi Davidson from Issaquah School District to put together a kind of like somebody brought it up a MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving program about drugs and alcohol. And as we really got into it, we started to really look, and we found out that there was a lot of different topics that come up, especially around prom time, as far as making good decisions. So we actually opted to make it more about having education towards making good decisions, because part of the main problem is that if you tell a kid not to do something, what's the first thing they do? They run right out and do it. So I'm not going to stand up in front of the classes and say, "Don't do this." So what we did is we approached it from, since it was for the health classes, we approached it from that side of it. So they are graphic, and if we can get it to come up. Okay, no problem.
Keep going.
All right. And so it's about making good choices, and it's trying to approach them from the point of you're becoming an adult, so you have to make decisions like adults. And the feedback I've gotten directly from kids is that they appreciated not being talked down to or at, but with. And so that was my approach as we put this whole thing together. And so we start with some of the traffic stats. That this is pulled directly from the Washington State Traffic Safety Commission, so they're as up to date as we can keep them. And one of the things that really surprised me as I dove into this with a couple of my colleagues, and then it finally ended up as part of my gopher process, is I'm the one that ends up bringing this out. And so I have come to the health classes here at Skyline. I do it probably 7 times in one day, twice a year at Issaquah, and we've even gotten into Liberty as well. So we're trying to get the message out there. And the feedback I've gotten directly from the students themselves as well as graphic, that they appreciated the education so they can stop and think. And that was my goal as I approached it, was if I can get somebody to even think about it, even if it's on the "ooh, that was gross" side, at least they're thinking about it and they're talking about it. So it's something to move forward with. So we kind of played around with it, and we literally did purchase the Trauma Nurses Talk Tough slide deck, so we could legally use their slides in this. But then we brought in the Washington State, because that's actually out of Oregon, out of Portland, and we brought in the Washington State traffic statistics. And what really surprised me as we got into it is that while we all know about drunk driving or impaired driving, drugs and alcohol, what really surprised me was how fast distracted driving was climbing the cause ladder of both serious and fatal accidents, crashes. And just last year it surpassed it. So that's 31% of all fatal crashes, of all age groups. 31% has alcohol related, 32% is distracted driving. So that's over 50%. That's 63% of all fatal crashes, and it's about 45% of all serious crashes that involve serious injury are those two combined. So it's a huge problem. And Don't Drink, Don't Drive has been around for 20 plus years, actively been around for 20 plus years. So this was an attempt to try to take a different pathway, because while it has decreased, the overall number has decreased, it's that whole thing where it's zero tolerance now, meaning that 0 fatalities on the roads of Washington is now the big push of the Washington Traffic Safety Commission. So we wanted to try to get that out there. Not to mention as these students are aging and coming out into the driving force, we want them to be aware. Okay. So the first thing that we always talked about, or that we're going to talk about when this is presented, is not only about impaired, but also distracted driving, because that's a huge chunk of the problem. But also what happens to our bodies, because part of making decisions as an adult is understanding what the consequences of your decisions are. And while they're learning that they have direct consequences with themselves, a lot of times the people that they injured did nothing wrong. Or the people who caused the crashes, those people that are involved in did nothing wrong. Wrong place, wrong time. So there's other consequences. Also the people within the car, if they're driving, they're responsible for everybody in the car as well. And so it's just trying to drive that point home. And then I really want to get across the fact that there's a difference between a seat belt and a safety belt. A seat belt is a belt that's attached to a seat. A safety belt keeps you in the seat when you're involved in a crash. So if you don't wear it right, you've just turned a potential life-saving part of your car actually can become a weapon inside that car. And so it's not just the fact that you're bouncing around. If you wear it improperly, you can actually cause more damage. So that's why it's about making sure it's a safety belt so it's worn correctly. And then hopefully by the time we're done, we've given them enough information that they can make smart choices. I tend to walk around, and I'm married to an Italian, so I talk with my hands. So I apologize, but it also helps keep people engaged. So there's little tidbits throughout the whole thing. Injuries are the leading cause of death in the age group of 1 to 44, not illness. So basically, 300 people die a day from injury-related causes. Okay? That includes homicide, that includes suicide, all that stuff. But by the time this particular presentation is over, at least 2 people have died somewhere in the United States. Okay? It's just to kind of put it in perspective. The other thing is that crashes are not accidents. Can anybody tell me what the definition of an accident is? Not preventable, happens out of the blue. Anybody have an idea how many motor vehicle incidences are actually accidents? Less than 5%. About somewhere between 90, depending on which report you read, 95 to 96% of all motor vehicle incidences actually are preventable. One of the biggest ones is speed. Simply slowing down, being aware of what's around you, can actually help prevent or at least mitigate and decrease the amount of injury done. So this particular crash, relatively nice truck, or what was involved in a crash. No drugs, no alcohol. Simply lost control going around a corner. They're doing about 60 in a posted 35-mile-an-hour corner. Across the center line. What it doesn't show you, it's hard to see, is this one over here is the car they hit. That was doing nothing wrong. Simply wrong place, wrong time, and got nailed. Okay. Fortunately, the only person who died, I guess, would be the driver of the car that caused it. Everybody in this car survived, but they all ended up in extended stays in hospitals. Okay. Once again, doing nothing wrong. So the consequence of the decision to speed is that you injured other people, or in this case it was a he injured other people. In Washington State, drivers aged 16 to 17 that 1 year have the highest speed-involved fatal crash rate of any age group, and it's most of those are combined, and it's still the highest. And it all boils down to is that people who are learning to drive are new at. It's not a skill you're born with, it's a skill you have to practice, and unfortunately, the only way to practice it is truly behind the wheel. You can do videos and all that stuff, not gaming, but the video process of learning how to turn and all that stuff. But ultimately, you're only going to get that feel for it when you're out on the street. Okay? So this is one of our first cases. And as you can tell by the color of the fire engines, the hideous hair and clothes, this is actually probably late 70s, early 80s. Okay? But unfortunately, the problem is the same. So this is, what kind of an area is this? Residential. What do you think the posted speed limit would be? 25. In this particular case, because it is a little bit older, it was posted at 35, but the point being is it was a restricted speed area because it is a residential area. Here's the car. You can see the skid mark here, and you can see the other one that's underneath, comes out over here. How fast do you think the car was going if this was going this way? At a 60? How? 45. They estimated at impact. So you saw that he was skidding, which meant that he was sideways with brakes on. They impacted it over 90 miles an hour. Residential. 6 blocks from a high school. Here's your driver. Okay. Now, this is a 17-year-old kid who was a known hothead. Back then, they said he drove while angry. Okay, bad driver. We would call it what now? Road rage. Road rage. No drugs, no alcohol. This is what happened. Is he got in an argument with his girlfriend? Don't know who won, don't know who lost. But he decided he was going to leave school, and he was pissed when he got behind the wheel. There's no other way to explain that one. Just mad. She jumped in the car with him. And in that process, her best friend also jumped in the car. 2 more friends got in the car. So now there's 5 people in a car that's from the 60s. So it had a bench front seat. So it went driver, girlfriend in the middle, best friend on the outside, 2 more friends in the back. I don't even know if this had seat belts, let alone safety belts. But nobody was wearing them, no matter what. Yeah. So when you impact a telephone pole 2.5 feet into a car at the driver, you die instantly. That's what happened. But it also wrapped around, and so it instantly killed the best friend on the outside. What you can barely see is a hand right here. This is the girlfriend trapped on the inside, impaled on a piece of metal, bleeding to death. And back then, they didn't have the jaws of life, which they could literally tear apart a car in about 2 minutes, and she bled to death there. But she was conscious when these guys were talking to her, because we have the story, so we know exactly what happened. These guys are working on the 2 in the back. Now, what happens when you're inside a vehicle and you're not restrained is you bounce around like a ping pong ball. No control of where you're going. So while those 2 survived, they had life-altering head injuries and were never the same people again. I doubt he got up in the morning and said, I'm going to kill myself, my girlfriend, and her best friend, and life-alter 2 more of our friends. He simply got behind the wheel when he wasn't thinking because he was mad. Punched it coming out of the high school parking lot, and within 6 blocks, lost control of his car. So this is what happens. So can anybody tell me how fast most people walk? Just rough estimate.
2.5.
Yeah, 2 to 4 miles an hour is, 2 is what you walk around at, 4 is I gotta go to the bathroom, I'm moving. Okay. How about jogging or running? 6. It's up to 6 to 10. Okay, Olympic level sprinters can for very short periods of time get up to 15 miles an hour. But unfortunately, our bodies work, while we have bone structure and rib cages and all of that to help protect us, is not designed to protect us at a rate faster than we can walk or run. As soon as we exceed that, we've now potentially turned our protective mechanism into a weapon in and of itself, because when bones break, they're sharp. So as soon as we go faster than 15 miles an hour, and other than my grandma, I don't know anybody who drives 15 miles an hour anywhere. Okay. So the other part of that is when you're in a car, you're moving at the same rate through space as that car. So that's why you feel kind of, you go back when when you accelerate, and then after a while, you kind of feel yourself come back. You're not getting pushed back in the seat. You've now accelerated to the same speed, moving through space as your vehicle. If that vehicle comes to a sudden stop, you're still moving through space at that previous rate of speed until you can either slow down, or in most cases until you hit something. Most likely the steering wheel or the front dash. That's when things start to go wrong. As you slide forward, your legs can hit the front dash and you can break long bones. Up to 60% of the circulating volume of blood is contained in your pelvis and in your long bones at any one given time. As soon as you break both major bones here, and especially if you break the pelvis, you can literally bleed to death, or what they refer to as exsanguinate, that's the term for it, without ever having a drop of blood outside your body. And I've seen it happen personally. I'm at the beginning, I said I was a nurse. I was an emergency department nurse for 19 of the 23 years I've been a nurse. So while I haven't taken care of these specific people, I've taken care of just about every single one of these types of people. So I have taken care of people who have broken both legs and a pelvis, and we could not keep up with the amount of blood we needed to give. In trauma terms, the pelvis is known as the kitchen sink. And you can, if you break the kitchen sink, that's where everything pools. Your chest hits, it compresses. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Right up until you go faster than 15 miles an hour, you've got broken ribs, starts puncturing organs. More importantly, what's on top of this, on top of the spine? It's your head. As soon as you start whacking your head around, now you've got a finite vault that, as your brain is protected in there, but it can slap up inside the skull, bruise itself. That's your concussions or bleed. But more importantly, spinal cord. Once you do damage to your spinal cord, other than very minor injuries, it's usually permanent. Especially if it's literally cut or completely smashed. So what often happens is people go into their windshield and they hit it with the top of their head because they're sort of halfway maybe restrained, or that they've taken the steering wheel to the chest, and then it pushes down on their top of their head. It's called axial loading, and it literally just starts popping vertebrae. And we'll go over that in just a second. So this is the main thing to remember, though. The faster you go, the quicker you stop, the harder you're going to hit. So that's where airbags and things have tried to slow down. But can anybody tell me what rate of speed an airbag deploys in? Has anybody ever been involved where their airbag has been, anything where their airbag has deployed? It actually is an explosion. It's designed to counteract your force moving forward. So it actually deploys at about 200 miles an hour. That's why people who talk about it, who've ever had it happen, oftentimes have burns, because the material comes out so fast that literally will, wherever it hits you, it's moving that fast. It's the only way it can get fully open before you hit it, because we're talking portions of seconds. So while there's safety mechanisms built into cars, ultimately, the faster you go, the quicker you stop, the harder you're going to hit, whatever that is. So we have to talk about drinking and driving because it's still like a significant portion of what's going on. It does impair judgment. All you have to do is look at YouTube to find that out, right? But there's also mixed messages out there where there's a lot of don't drink, don't drive. If you're thinking of it from a teenage point of view, well then that means it's okay to drink as long as I don't drive. There's actually a scientific reason why 21 was picked as the age of consent. It has nothing to do with your ability to actually think through a problem. It's actually a chemical response that's going on inside your body that changes at that time frame. So remember, this was created for health classes. This presentation usually coincides with their brain development section, as well as the alcohol-drug interaction with the brain. So it's not true about just don't drive, it's okay to drink. Because underage drinking actually has a lot of potential lifelong health effects. But this one piece here really kind of got me was when they did a survey by the CDC, when they were truly looking at binge drinking, which they defined as 5 drinks in one sitting, so it's basically boom, boom, boom. 50% of binge drinking in America is done by people under the age of 21. That's a staggering statistic. Having been in the ED for 19 years, I see what a lifetime of that kind of drinking can do to people. It's also the leading cause of death, the single cause of death for ages 15 to 20. And that includes everything from car crashes to falling off stuff to suicide, things like that. Okay. Here's the actual scientific reason why they picked 21. It wasn't just a bunch of old guys in a room throwing darts at a board with numbers saying, okay, it's 21. Okay. There's an area of the brain known as the prefrontal cortex. It starts to actually develop between 12 and 14. This area of logic, reasoning, problem solving, that's all right in that area. What they've been able to prove or show is that it actually just doesn't go over a year or two. It actually goes into your 20s as to when it continually is developing. What they've shown is that introduction of alcohol, and you don't know if it's one drink or if it's literally binge drinking for 5 years. It's all over the place. But if you introduce alcohol and drugs or drugs into that area, you can either slow that development, completely alter it, so if they were going one direction, they go in a completely different direction, or actually stop it. And having had personal experience within my own family of chronic alcoholism, as somebody who started early, at 48 or so, 48, they still made decisions like a 15-year-old. Couldn't keep a job because they would just fly off the handle or just go do something really kind of dumb, actually. And there's nothing wrong with making decisions like a 15-year-old when you're 15. But when you're 48, you should be able to have matured through that process, learn from your mistakes, and move forward. He couldn't. He was stuck, literally, as a 15-year-old at that part of his ability in this area of his brain. Now you add in, on top of that, drugs, or combined, it compounds the whole problem. So this is literally the reason why it's still not okay to drink. Don't worry about his face; it was photoshopped out so people couldn't actually look at it. But his I identify him. His family wanted his story told. Here's a gentleman, no drugs, no alcohol, got into a vehicle with a friend who had a bad driving record. Sped a lot, lost control of his vehicle. This gentleman, though, decided not to put on his safety belt. He was ejected, went through the front windshield. How he didn't break his neck, nobody knows. Okay? But he had damage so much done. This is a bolt that stuck into his head in order to read the pressure. You can see the divots here. Those are actually surgically removed bone windows to allow the brain to swell. The brain is like any other portion of your body. You twist an ankle, it's going to swell. Same way with the brain. And being that it's inside of a vault, it has no place to go. So they literally surgically have to go in. Anytime you see where we're breathing, any patient that actually is breathing through the neck, called the tracheostomy, this gentleman was on a vent because his brain couldn't tell his body to breathe. His neurosurgeon was reported as saying, I did nothing to help him other than to open his head, scoop out the bloody mess, and close, because there was nothing he could do, because the damage had been done. Because he flew through the windshield, landed on his head. How he didn't, like I said, how he didn't break his neck on top of that, nobody knows. So he's 18. And there's a wail, W-A-I-L, a wail that comes out of a mother when you tell them that either their child is dead or their child is going to be like this. So he will never be able to walk, feed, or anything like that again. He's a total care patient, just like an infant, because he has no ability to do any of this for himself. So you can see where he's had his surgery, all of that. But that was a moment in time where, would he still have been injured? Yes, because the damage done to the vehicle was pretty substantial. Would he have been, it's hard to say for sure he would, that he would not have had the same injuries, but at least he wouldn't have had the compounding injuries of flying through the windshield and landing on his head. Okay. This is a lady who was not drinking, was not driving either. Got into an argument with her boyfriend at a bar. I've only had 2 drinks. That's the infamous one. I've been a nurse across the nation, a travel nurse, and it's always I've had 2 beers. And I don't know what size beers you're drinking, but it's not a normal mug you get at a pub. I don't know why they pick 2, but they do. He argued with her. She lost. She was going to drive home. And then this is where the decision making comes into play. She chose to get into the vehicle instead of to find another way home. She also chose not to use her safety belt. So at 65 miles an hour, they rolled their pickup. He rolled the pickup, and she was ejected. Now, why do you want to stay inside of a vehicle when you're rolling? Anybody know?
I mean, the structure would at least protect you, sound like.
That's to a point, that's correct. But the other thing is inertia. So as you're rolling, whichever direction you're rolling over, if you're ejected, you're usually, a significant portion of the time, you're ejected into the path of the vehicle as it's rolling. Her luck didn't stop there. And not only did she get thrown into the path of the vehicle, it rolled not only over her, it rolled onto her, and that's where it stopped rolling. So unfortunately, where she was pinned underneath, she had the exhaust laying right across her pelvis. So she broke just about every major bone in her body, was intubated because of the crush injury, but because of crush injury, there was nothing to fix. They had to literally pump blood in through large bores up here, and then let it seep out. And they just, basically, this is a medical vacuum. She went through all of this and survived this. All of her ribs were completely broken, so there's no way for her body to breathe, so that's why she's intubated. Her ribs healed, she started breathing on her own. She then had to go for burn treatment for second, third degree burns pretty much throughout her whole pelvis. And then learn how to walk again on top of it. Consequences, well, he was responsible for the crash. She could have taken steps to either mitigate it, stay inside the vehicle, let it roll, all that stuff, or even better yet, not been there. So this one bad pun. This one comes very close to home. This is what's left of a motorcycle. I ride a motorcycle. I have for years, and I probably won't stop. Okay? But this gentleman was texting. Not the rider, the driver. Was texting, literally crossed the center line and center punched a father of 2 driving home. He was doing nothing wrong. Just physics alone tells you who lost on that one. Okay? No drugs, no alcohol. Distracted driving. I don't know if you're familiar with Hobart Road, as you go right past 2nd there where you get on it by Issaquah High School. I live out Hobart Road. I've almost been clipped just in the last 6 months, probably 3 or 4 times as I go around that corner right by the churches. And it's simply people not paying attention And I've actually looked at people and they're like this as they're driving around the corner, as they come across the center. So, but I've had personal experience with this as well, because at 18, at 17, I joined the Navy. I had been playing trumpet, so I became the bugler for my division, which meant I played taps, all that kind of stuff, and colors, and I also played taps at funerals. And it really hit home when I had to bury two of my closest friends because they got drunk one night and decided to see how fast they could get a motorcycle to go with two people on it. Why? For some unknown reason, they didn't put their leather on, but they both had helmets on. I still can't figure that one out. But anyway, they slid, hit a curve, and flew through the air, and they both impacted a gigantic oak tree and were killed instantly. So not only did I get to play taps once, I had to play it twice on the same day for two of my friends. So it doesn't stop me from riding, but my head is on a swivel because I'm not, pretty much everybody's out there to kill me as far as I'm concerned, and that's how I ride. I actually ride very defensively because of that. This is Brandon. He's 18 years old. He's the Dare Club president of his high school. This is Brandon on his graduation day. This is what he got for graduation. Not new, but new for Brandon. As a group, post-graduation, they all met out at a campground. They were going to go out for a weekend of camping. And somewhere along the way, Beer King got involved. And he's the Dare Club president, or was when he graduated. So how fast is most dirt forest roads? What's the speed limit? 15 if you're lucky, especially since we don't maintain them anymore, right? So this is what happens when your truck hits a bridge support at 60 because you're bouncing along a road that's designed to be 15 gauge control. Okay. Now, Brandon was driving, his best friend was on the outside, and a mutual friend was in the middle seat. Now, the middle seat doesn't have shoulder belts. It only has a lap belt. And the guy later actually said, I have no idea why I clipped that belt, because I never wear a seat belt. He just did when he got in for some unknown reason. Brandon was ejected, best friend was ejected. The guy in the middle is the one who crawled out of this, and is the one that went and got help. Okay, and that's a lap only belt. Well, does everybody remember what lawn darts are? I say that in class and I get this blank stare because nobody remembers what they are, right? So it's those big, long darts that have the big, heavy thing you throw up in the air and they come down and drunk people run under them and get impaled. That's why you can't play it anymore. That's what happens. That's because we don't have feathers. Humans don't have feathers. Our bodies were never meant to fly through the air. So even as we all know, kids, they're all head heavy, so they tend to lead with their head. In the air, adults are the same way. They usually, if given enough time, enough of a flight trajectory, they will almost always land on your head. Okay? At 60 miles an hour, that's a good launch. But because of the way that the dirt and everything was around him, as Brandon flew, he didn't have time to arc. He flew straight out, and as he belly flopped at 60 miles an hour and crushed just about everything. You can see the surgically repaired arms, long term, because we had to breathe for him, all of his lungs. Okay? More importantly, he crushed his bowels. So he ended up with a colostomy at the age of 18. Permanent. It's not, sometimes we do this to let everything heal. In this case, it's permanent. So that means you never know when you're going to the bathroom. It contains the stool, but it doesn't contain smell. So it all of a sudden just comes out. Had to go through all this physical therapy, learn how to walk again. He survived, had multiple surgeries, multiple ortho surgeries, all that stuff. But then he got to deal with this. This is Brandon's best friend, who didn't have the luxury of belly flopping. It's hard to see because of the way it gets washed out. But here's his head, shoulders and arm, torso, and what this is actually, you can see it on here, it's jeans. So he actually landed headfirst and flipped over into the river. Okay. Brandon went to jail for 5 years after all that for vehicular homicide. Okay. And he'll have to deal with that for the rest of his life. Simply because there was alcohol involved, made a bad decision to speed down a dirt road. And no matter how hard we try, there are ones that we don't get the opportunity to try. What's this a picture of? Does anybody know?
Used to be a neck.
Yeah, cervical spine. Okay. Is it okay, or is it something wrong with it? Disjointed. This is axial loaded, pushing straight down to the top of the head. This is what happens when you hit an angled windshield as you're starting to launch out. Okay, so far up until this point, we've talked about people just making the conscious decision not to wear their safety belt. This is where wearing one inappropriately actually contributed to the whole process. 17-year-old kid got in the passenger seat. Once again, I don't know who these people are driving with, but they need to find good friends who know how to drive. Because this is where his friend had a bad driving record. He drove too fast. He had a history of it. He was wearing his seatbelt, and I purposely left it in his seatbelt because what he did is it was a new enough truck that he was in that it had the lap shoulder combination. Okay. And he didn't like the way it was rubbing on his neck. So instead of reaching up and moving the pillar mount, he pulled it out and put it under his arm. Okay. Has anybody ever pulled a safety belt too fast? What happens?
Stops.
Stops. Why does it stop?
Thinks you're in an accident.
Correct. But how far will it give before it stops? By federal law, it has to stop within 3 inches to give you that. Because what it's trying to do is allow you. Remember, you're going through space. Your car is now stopped. You're still moving at that same rate of speed. It's a chance to start to slow down before it stops you. Trying to lessen the amount of the energy that gets transmitted into you. But if you introduce slop into that system already, it's still going to give up to that 3 inches. And usually what happens is it's enough that it comes up off of the lap,